Hello and welcome back to Sof Pasuk, the Torah Reading Podcast. I'm Donnie Rose, and this week we read Bereshis. This week, my friend, frequent podcast contributor, and personal Mesorah advisor Moshe Ginsberg reminded me that there is a Mesorah advisory in effect for the Haftorah. Yeshayahu Perek Mem Bet Pasuk Hey. This is the first pasuk of the Haftorah, and here we have a munach with a psik that is in a chain with a revia. Normally when this happens, this becomes a munach legarmei, like munach revi'i. However, this is listed by the Mesorah as an exception. Although this munach is in a chain with a revia, it is not a munach legarmei. It's pronounced instead as a munach psik. So you would read the pasuk this way. Ko amar ha'el Adonai borei hashamayim v'notehem roka ha'aretz v'tze'etza'eha nosei neshama la'amaleha v'ruach laholechim ba. A few weeks ago in the podcast for Vayelech, we spoke about how the Mesorah parses construct chains. This came up in the last pasuk of Vayelech on the words Es divrei hashira hazos, where the better manuscripts parse this in a way which is not usually how the Mesorah does it. The Mesorah's bias is usually to keep words that modify each other together, even if it breaks the construct. We saw this, for example, in Bereshit Perek Yud Daled Pasuk Yud Gimel. In the middle of Lech Lecha, we have V'hu shochein be'elonei mamrei ho'emori. The construct is elonei mamrei, which we would have thought would come together, but because the word afterwards, ho'emori, modifies the second part of the construct, the Mesorah breaks the construct and keeps the adjective together with what it modifies. And that's why we get the parsing of V'hu shochein be'elonei mamrei ho'emori. We have another good example of this in this week's parsha. This is Perek Daled Pasuk Chaf Aleph. Listen for how we parse the end of this pasuk. V'shem achiv Yuval hu haya avi kol tofes kinar v'ugav. This always struck me as unusual because the word avi is in construct. It means father of. How or why would we ever get a zakef on the first word of a construct? Here the construct is 3 words long. Avi kol tofes, the father of all who handle. And then after the construct we have 2 words which effectively become the object of the verb tofes, kinar v'ugav. He is the father of all those who handle the harp and the pipe. To understand what happened here, the first ingredient is to understand that the Mesorah wants to keep words that modify each other together. In this case, we have an interesting compound complication. First, we have kinar modifying tofes. He's the father of all who handle what? Answer kinar, but it's compound. It's not just kinar, it's also ugav. Both of the words kinar and ugav belong with tofes, but only one of them can actually go there because there must be a tipcha before the sof pasuk. So therefore the Mesorah chooses the first one. Kol tofes kinar v'ugav. That explains the parsing of the words kol tofes kinar and v'ugav. But why would we want avi to be separated with a zakef? Why not have it as a tevir? In other words, why not this? V'shem achiv Yuval hu haya avi kol tofes kinar v'ugav. Wouldn't that be better because it would make less of a separation between avi, which means literally father of, and the object, kol tofes? I think the answer is something clever about the tipcha. As we know, a tipcha has to come before a sof pasuk. If it's the only pause before a sof pasuk, it really doesn't have a lot of pausal value. But as soon as you introduce other pauses into its chain, it becomes a more serious pause to consider. So if we would have introduced a tevir under avi, the way this would have parsed is avi kol tofes kinor v'ugav. And that wouldn't be correct, because v'ugav does not apply to avi kol tofes kinor. It applies only to the last part. It applies to tofes kinor v'ugav. Another way to think about it is really what the Mesorah wanted to do here is to break this in half. Avi kol tofes kinor v'ugav. But there's no way to not have a tipcha before the sof pasuk, and therefore there is a tipcha on kinor, but it's a relatively weak one. This reminds me also of a good example that goes the other way. This is from Shvi'i of Vayeshev, it's Parak Mem Pasuk Aleph. Listen to how we parse Chateu mashke melech Mitzrayim v'ha'ofeh. Vayi achar hadivorim ha'ele Chateu mashke melech Mitzrayim v'ha'ofeh la'adonehem lemelech Mitzrayim. Here we do find a tevir under Chateu, but it makes sense in this case by the way this is constructed. Here we have Chateu is the verb, then we have mashke melech Mitzrayim as a construct chain, mashke of melech of Mitzrayim, the butler of the king of Egypt, followed by another word, v'ha'ofeh, the baker, which applies to the entire chain. Chateu, they sinned, who sinned, mashke melech Mitzrayim, and ha'ofeh, where ha'ofeh is cleverly modifying the first part of the construct chain. It really is mashke v'ha'ofeh asher lemelech Mitzrayim. We want there to be a stronger pause on Mitzrayim in this case. Chateu mashke melech Mitzrayim v'ha'ofeh, and therefore we use a tevir. This has been Sof Pasuk, the Torah Reading Podcast. You can email me at torahreadingpodcast@gmail.com. I'm Donnie Rose, and every day is a good day.